In a small room, in a normal home, on an average street, in a regular town, there is a girl. And in that girl is the devil. William Friedkin and William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist exploded into theaters in 1973, rattling audiences and quickly being given a reputation as the scariest movie ever made. That's a big promise to live up to, and while The Exorcist is rightfully held up as one of the greatest horror movies of all time, what's most compelling about this story of young Regan MacNeil and the battle for her soul are its questions of faith, hope, and love in a cruel world. Questions that shake its characters, and that are asked of its viewers. Where is faith in God when evil seems so much stronger than believers? How can we hope when the innocent suffer for no reason? What can love do when we seem to lose everything we love? The Exorcist, adapted by Blatty from his novel of the same name, sees young Regan MacNeil possessed by a demon, with her increasingly desperate mother, Chris, seeking out an exorcism when everything else fails. Her search leads her to Father Damien Karras, who's in the middle of his own crisis of faith, and Father Lancaster Marin, who has battled this same demon before. Their fight for Regan's soul will test them and force everyone touched by this possession to question their beliefs. The reputation of Friedkin's film precedes it for basically every viewer, not just because of the endless parodies, homages, and outright rip-offs that have happened even decades after its debut, but because of the near hysteria that met it in theaters. Some of it's apocryphal, some of it's documented by news broadcasts, but stories of fainting, throwing up, and running from the theater accompanied The Exorcist, making it instantly infamous, derided by many critics, but also highly lauded, gaining 10 Academy Award nominations, a rarity for a horror movie in any decade. Is The Exorcist still the scariest movie of all time? Probably not, depending on what scares you. It also doesn't help that the film has inspired hundreds of demonic possession movies in the nearly 50 years since. You've seen all these elements in dozens of horror films by now. Possessed children, desperate families, spiritual battles with demons, all ratcheted up and up and up in intensity. By comparison, The Exorcist is a very small, very subdued film. When fully possessed Regan isn't on screen, The Exorcist plays more like a drama, and specifically, Friedkin has always maintained that The Exorcist isn't a horror movie. That's not true, but it's an attitude that shapes his film, as the director brings a documentary-like focus to how he portrays so much of this movie. The Exorcist is one of the most analyzed and documented horror movies of all time, so I won't bother repeating every behind-the-scenes detail here. There's plenty of places that you can see that. Specifically, watch critic Mark Kermode's great documentary, The Fear of God, 25 Years of The Exorcist. You know the details, even if you haven't seen the movie. The pea soup, the spinning head, Friedkin's sometimes near-abusive methods of getting the right performance from his actors, and frequent consultations with Jesuit priests for the authenticity of the exorcism ritual. What I want to talk about is the why, not the how or what. Friedkin, who got his start in documentaries, always brings that sort of observational approach to his films, and that's a crucial part of The Exorcist tone. As Linda Blair's Regan gets worse and worse, acting out in increasingly violent and horrifying ways, the understanding of modern science is pushed to its limits with test after test. Friedkin's camera, with cinematography by Owen Roisman that flips back and forth between realistically stark and demonically moody, documents the step-by-step process of understanding what is happening to Regan, ruling out every potential scientific and medical reason until only the spiritual remains. The relationship of Ellen Burstyn's Chris MacNeil to her daughter Regan is what drives the film, propels her to seek every possible type of help until she's demanding an exorcism.
Jesus Christ, won't somebody help me?
No, you don't understand. Your daughter...
God, can't you help her? Just help her!
But the inverse also drives the massive guilt of Jason Miller's Father Damien Karras, as he's unable to properly care for his ailing and eventually dying mother. And Friedkin's shooting of Karras is even more documentary-like. Handheld tracking shots, long lenses in the streets. At times, it really does feel like we're being given a secret look into the hidden life of a priest, a man who outwardly represents the Catholic faith, but has actually lost all of it. Even Karras balks at the idea of an exorcism.
You asked me what I think is best for your daughter. 6 months under observation in the best hospital you can find.
But there's nothing that can deny the demonic presence within Regan. While modern audiences may be immune to many of the film's shocks, The terrifying aspect of The Exorcist lies in its central idea that it doesn't matter whether you believe in demons, angels, a god, or the afterlife. They're already here, in your home, in your child's bed. The Exorcist, both the film and book, falls squarely into the realm of the occult. While there are many types of supernatural horror, the occult specifically deals with supernatural beliefs and practices that usually fall outside the scope of religion and science, but are propelled by and fought with faith in something. This isn't Ghostbusters. You can't save Reagan McNeil with a ghost trap, although that might be kinda cool. And while faith is a central aspect of this story, God is never confirmed or denied. The Catholic Church itself is rarely shown in action. The only thing ever proven is the existence of a demon. In The Exorcist, hell is real, but heaven is something that has to be taken on faith. The movie's outlook on faith is also a product of its two creators' differing outlooks. While The Exorcist is a work of fiction, its author based it on the real-life 1949 exorcism of a 14-year-old boy in Prince George's County, Maryland. "I intended it to be an apostolic work, to help people in their faith," said Blatty, "because I thoroughly believed in the authenticity and validity of that particular event." On the other hand, Friedkin once said, "You don't know a damn thing, and neither do I. Nobody knows if there's an afterlife, a heaven or hell. What is our purpose here? Nobody knows that. We have no idea." Of course, horror and religion can often go hand in hand, with religion itself being the source of horror in many movies and shows. Usually, it's the corruption of spirituality and the darkest sides of organized religion that are critiqued through metaphorical horror, like Mike Flanagan's recent Midnight Mass for Netflix. But organized religion isn't really the focus of The Exorcist. It's personal faith in something greater than yourself. Many of Blatty's novels are centered on questions of faith, and for many of his most famous works of fiction, the collision of faith, spirituality, and violent death. This intersection causes his characters to question the existence of God and what living in a world created and cared for by a higher power would truly mean. This is maybe more explicitly the focus in Blatty's Legion, turned into Exorcist 3, which rules. Let's not talk about Exorcist 2 and the Ninth Configuration, but questioning the existence of God is both Father Karras' struggle with faith and the deeper reason behind Reagan's possession, but it affects more than just the priest. "There was a period of time after my mother's death," said Blatty, "when I would describe my faith as more of an intense hope rather than a solidly held belief. And it was during this time that Blatty wrote The Exorcist. Being confronted with ultimate evil that you cannot possibly understand or have any power over is terrifying. But there's something scarier at the heart of the film, something that doesn't depend on the spiritual beliefs of an audience. It's knowing that something is wrong with your child, but not knowing what it is and being unable to do anything about it. The coming of the demon starts on the periphery. A Ouija board, a shaking bed, sounds in the attic, then strange behaviors before moving in fully. Reagan starts to act strange, gets diagnosed with a potential nerve disorder, and then just simply starts acting like someone completely different. A massive chunk of the first half of The Exorcist is dedicated to Reagan's diagnosis and multiple treatments, all rendered in very realistic and disturbing detail. Why? Well, I believe it's for two reasons. To completely rule out any other option than possession, and to put us in Chris's shoes, watching our child grow worse and worse without the ability to do anything about it. Even worse, Chris and Reagan are temporarily living in Georgetown for a movie shoot. There's no comfort of home, no supportive family. When there's something wrong with your child, even something small like a fever or night terrors, it just wears you down. You're fried, you're desperate, you're scared, and worst of all, you stop being the best parent you can be. It's in this evolution of Reagan that the child goes from being in a situation that's terrifying to being the terrifying thing itself. Friedkin's documentary style plays off the starkness of medical care in the 70s. Medical care has obviously progressed a lot since then, but if you've ever had a loved one in the hospital, all the injections, incisions, stitches, and blood cut through the veneer of progress. We're bags of flesh, weakened at a moment's notice, burst with the smallest force. The Exorcist is about more than the terrors of the flesh, but the weakness of the flesh in the face of evil informs so much here, not the least of which is Father Lancaster Marin's death. And let's talk about Max von Sydow's Father Merrin for a moment. Although he's only a minor character, he acts as the counterbalance to Karras, a man steadfast in his beliefs, but physically weak. Unlike the physically fit but doubting Karras. We don't know much about Merrin here, although more is explained in the book, but he's a man of God through and through. Yet even Merrin can't cast the demon from Reagan, calling into question the nature of belief.
I think the point is to make us despair. To see ourselves as animal and ugly.
I don't think that The Exorcist is trying to either affirm or undermine the Catholic Church, but instead to grapple with spirituality as a whole. The opening scenes of Meron in Iraq establish the ideas of ancient evil, signified by a statue and a face-off between it and the priest. An ancient demon that makes itself known in the modern world, that strips away the facade of modern society. The conflict with that evil defines each character's faith. Ultimately, there's no reason for why Regan was possessed. Why this child out of anyone else? Sure, there's a Ouija board. That definitely gave the satanic panic some ammo in the 80s, but there's nothing that connects Regan to the demon found by Meron in Iraq. Like faith, everyone, including the audience, has to decide why this happened. And the one most affected by it all is Father Karras, who is racked with guilt and unbelief throughout the entire story. Guilt over his mother's death, alone in a mental institution, suffering in her final moments, and unbelief over why a supposedly just God would let this happen. Karras' lack of faith makes him almost inert, unable to help his mother, unable to save Regan, and in one of the film's most lingering, small moments, unable to extend help to a homeless man.
You happen all over, boy. I'm a Catholic.
The exorcism that follows is a matter of procedure, but it relies on the belief of its practitioners, and it's Karras that holds it back. Look at the examples of exorcism in the Bible, and you'll see that Karras has much more in common with the men used as cautionary examples of the people who use Christ's name, but don't know him as their savior. Men who went from place to place, attempted to use the name of the Lord Jesus over those who had evil spirits, saying, "I order you in the name of Jesus who Paul preaches." One day the evil spirit answered them, "Jesus I know, and Paul I know about, but who are you?" Then the man who had the evil spirit jumped on them and overpowered them all. He gave them such a beating that they ran out of the house naked and bleeding. The ultimate act of love comes when Meron dies and Karras has run out of options to save Regan. Instead of faith, Karras acts out of love, calling the demon into himself and then, with his last moment of strength, throwing himself out the window. Father Karras' death recalls Jesus casting the legion of demons out of a man and into a group of pigs, who immediately throw themselves off a cliff. But Karras' sacrifice is done on purpose and recalls a different verse from the Bible. "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Ultimately, Karras regains his faith in God as he lies in a bloodied heap at the bottom of the stairs, allowing his friend Father Dyer to perform last rites on him. An act of faith, an act of love, and a hope for something greater than the world.
Er gehört himself and will not was bekannt tun. No many partners in feeling. It's Serbia.
You could say that every movie is a dream forged by a group of creators that an audience participates in by watching. The dream is relived again and again over the years, and each generation can view it through a new lens. Every film has intent within the message designed by its creators, but once a film is done, the message is out of their hands. That's especially effective within the narrative of The Exorcist, as its two creative forces push and pull between its meaning: the documentarian, cynical viewpoint of Friedkin and the spiritual, hopeful outlook of Blatty. It's an outlook that also changes between the versions of The Exorcist that exist, the theatrical cut and the version you've never seen, which adds the infamous yet unnecessary spider walk scene, as well as a more hopeful ending.
Had your lunch? No.
But what does The Exorcist have to say about our lives in a world where the devil is very real? Are we powerless to help our family, our children, in such a bleak and cruel world? Is there such a thing as God? And if there is there a plan for us? The Exorcist is, in the end, just a movie. It has no actual correlation to reality. But like any great horror movie, it's meant to give us the chance to face our fears without consequence. And there are many fears within The Exorcist. Fear of true evil, fear of death, fear of powerlessness in the world. But there's also hope. If there is such a thing as the devil and an explanation for the evil of the world, what accounts for all the good? What you walk away from The Exorcist with will very much depend on your worldview, the lens through which the message of a nearly 50-year-old film is seen. But perhaps there is a lesson of faith, hope, and love found within the darkness. Faith in a higher power. Hope that we actually can protect the people we love. And love, an abiding love that lets us do what we thought we'd never have the strength to do. For all its horror, that's beautiful. Thanks for watching today's video, the final video in my Halloween series. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of work to put this entire series together, but I figured I had to finish it off with one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and The Exorcist definitely qualifies as that. It's a movie that I wanted to talk about for a while, but wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to say. But I think through all the scares and all the horror and all the controversy of the film, its questions of faith are what stand out the most to me. So I wanted to be able to explore that in a video. I'd love to hear your opinions on The Exorcist, and I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you for watching these videos and for making the Halloween season a lot of fun for the channel. I enjoy making videos about horror all year long, but Halloween is the chance to really do it big, and so I wanted to take that opportunity fully. The only other time of year that I think matches the Halloween season on my channel is December, which will be coming soon as December returns for the 3rd year in a row. Besides your thoughts on The Exorcist, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your favorite horror movies of all time, and what you think are the horror movies that define the genre. As always, thank you to my patrons for their continued support. It's a huge thing, and I really can't say thank you enough. If you'd like to be a patron, it's only $1 a month for early access to every video as well as exclusive Patreon-only audio reviews. I've done a lot of extra reviews this Halloween season, including a review of Halloween Kills, and pretty soon there will be a Patreon review of the Immortal Hulk series as a whole, which will sort of act as a follow-up to my Immortal Hulk video from a couple years ago. And in that video, I will be talking about the series all the way through issue 50, which at the time of recording this video just came out. I'll be back again soon with one more video before December, and until then, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and watching out for one another. See you soon, and happy Halloween!